If you're trying to create topography, you're often dealing with walls, curbs, paths, and other inputs like contours, spots. And the one great thing about Topo Kit is that it can help you take all of these things into account at once. So let's look at how we can draw walls and curbs and use those to participate in the design process for topography. So the first thing to notice is that we have curves that are flat, that define the front and the back of our wall. Second, we have spots that define the height of our wall, the front and the back essentially, the top and the bottom, respectively. So if I zoom out and look here at this in plan, these points are very close to the curves that have been drawn in plan. Now, if I look in Grasshopper, I can pull in the curves that are being drawn in plan, the features walls, and we also have spots, which we're using for walls, but also curbs, which we'll look at in a second. So spots are being brought in here. The Create Walls component for Topo Kit uses a curve tolerance and a spot tolerance. The curve tolerance is the distance between any two curves at approximately their midpoint that will determine whether or not they're close enough to join them to use for a wall. So if I were to have a tolerance that's higher than 5, it might start to connect this wall with this wall. So those tolerances have a little bit to do with the scale of your drawing and how you are setting up your workflow. Next, the spot tolerance, which is a bit smaller, is going to be used to associate the spot with the particular set of wall curves. This could be a bit higher since we don't have any walls that are really close to one another. We could almost have 1 or 2 feet for spot tolerance, as long as we kept those spots fairly close. So if I look here, these walls are essentially being created, and then they get joined or merged into a set of features. Before we move on to see how these function, let's look at curbs. So curbs work almost exactly the same as walls. You have your curb lines, your front and your back curves, which are defining the shape of the curve in plan, or curb in plan, and then the curb cuts, which are center lines for curb cuts. And we also use parameters, so the width of the curb cut, the run, and the flare. So if I were to move this, it moves the whole curb cut, and it also updates the grading, and we'll look at that. The way this works is that we use the curbs that we've created. Those are an input, and then out of that, after we have our cut center lines, our width, our run, and our flare, we get curbs out of that which are modified, which have the curb cut, but we also get ramps, which help us to build our topography. You can use the ramps or not, depending on how your project is set up. But all of these features, the walls, as you can see, the curbs, and the ramps, then can be used to create topography in addition to our geoset. Our geoset is using contours, breaklines, and even spots in a few places. Then we draw the topography and we cut contours, where you can see these bright green contours. Finally, we can draw our walls and curbs, we can do either walls or curbs. Actually, if we use either of these components, but we have specific components because we will be differentiating these two even further. But for now, they're very similar. These, in fact, I've mislabeled this. Curbs. And then this is just walls. So we'll save that. And we're doing a preview of wall curbs and wall masses. And we can bake these as well. So this is a real game changer. We can modify our contours. And that seems to update. Oh, no, I have to hit refresh for that to update. But we can also change these spots for our walls. It changes the wall, and it also changes the grading. This isn't jiving with the break line that I drew. So I undo. But you get the idea that we can actually manipulate the wall in terms of the elevations, but also in plan, we're just manipulating curves. This makes manipulating walls and curbs much easier than if you are changing the actual geometries. And the way that we would typically deal with this is we would bake a new topography and walls and curbs each time we make any changes to our inputs, to our break lines, to our spots, and our contours.